It can happen. It is possible. But only with big changes now to the way this country is run. And that's what I want to talk about today. As you've probably worked out, I think you know where I'm going now, don't you? Makerfield is no ordinary by-election. I'm getting plenty of advice about what I should do. The main piece being, for God's sake, get some new running shorts. If you've got any, Brendan, send them my way. I believe the by-election is very necessary. In my view, the time has come for a much bigger debate about how politics needs to change if it is to work properly for the north of England, because it doesn't. It doesn't. And this is what we've got to focus on. People are losing faith in politics. More than anything, that's what people's votes were saying on Thursday, the 7th of May. They deserve a bigger response than politicians have given them before. And that's what I intend to provide in this by-election like no other. My core argument is this. Britain, if you look at the last 50 years, Britain has been on the wrong path. 40 years on the wrong path. A path that has damaged communities across the north. The deindustrialisation of the 1980s was devastating for places across Makerfield, like Ashton in Makerfield, Orrell, Winstanley, Hindley, Plattbridge. But you know, you could reel off the same place names, couldn't you, in your communities? You know exactly what I am talking about. The draining away of economic, social and political power from these places, left adrift. That's what happened. But that deindustrialisation was then compounded by deregulation, privatisation in the 90s, and austerity in the 2010s. It all adds up to 40 years of neoliberalism that have not been kind to the north of England. 40 years of trickle-down economics that did not, in the end, trickle down very much at all to Plattbridge or Hindley. In fact, that system has siphoned wealth out of those places and into the hands of people for whom life was already very good. It created an economy that didn't work for most working people. It led to the loss of good jobs, the decline of our high streets and the neglect of our towns. It led to people paying over the odds for the daily basics, energy, housing, water, transport. And in the 2000s, and particularly in the 2010s, our councils across the north of England were stripped of the resource and power to do anything about it. They just don't have the agency that they should have to protect people from these changes. And that's the broken state of local government in England that we see right now, but is particularly felt in councils across the north. You know the truth of what I'm saying. It's left us in a very bad state. If politics can't fix something as simple as a pothole, you've got a very big problem. Why should people have faith in the ability of politics to do anything if it can't do something as simple as that? My view is that Brexit has been damaging, but I also believe the last thing we should do right now is rerun those arguments. Britain will be stuck in a permanent rut if we're just constantly arguing and people are pulling away from each other. It is time, surely, isn't it, to bring people back together, to focus on what we've got in common, to get the growth coming to all places so it's felt there. That is what we need in this moment. And it's really important that whatever comes out of this by-election, there's a more kind of unifying feeling about the change that we need to work towards. I am not proposing that the UK considers rejoining the EU. I respect the decision that was made at the referendum, and it's going to undermine everything I've said about strengthening democracy if we don't respect that vote. If we are to unify communities and the country, it means focusing on the big economic challenges we have, the structural problems that I've been talking about before, the fact that we gave away so many of the levers of economic power when we deregulated and privatised. That is a problem. We don't have control of the basics and the cost of them, and therefore we don't have control of public spending. If local authorities are facing the cost of temporary accommodation and the benefit system is chasing rents in the private rented sector, as we are right now, how can we control our costs as a country? It is about getting a fundamental grip on those things, and that's the main thing that matters. We need a relentless domestic focus in this period. Let's fix our own country. Let's get it working again. Let's get it back to where people want it to be. I sense a real yearning out there that people feel, why aren't we where we should be? Why aren't things just working as they should? And that's what I think has to be our focus now, fixing the fundamentals of our own country rather than plunging into another divisive debate about a relationship with other countries. But I do support what this government is doing in driving for a stronger, more collaborative approach with Europe, our closest neighbours with whom we share so much. So, in conclusion, everybody, I decided to put myself forward to bring this debate to the fore. Too much of what we need to change is in the hands of others. The North doesn't have all of the control that it needs to turn things around, to turn around the lives of our people, to give new life to our towns and our high streets. We just don't have it. And if we're to take what we've done in the last decade and then go further and deeper in the next, there's going to have to be a serious transfer of power and resources right across the north of England. The places where I grew up, long ignored by national politics, are finally at the centre of the nation's attention. And I can't tell you how proud that makes me feel. And I was growing up, I saw them go into decline. I was at school in this area when the mines were closed and industry closed in the 1980s. And they've just not recovered any time since. So to have them now, through this by-election, under the spotlight, that does make me happy, because the people there can now rightly demand of Westminster, Whitehall and all of the political parties, what are you going to do for us? And they all have to answer that question now because of this by-election. And then the public will be able to choose between the answers that they are given. And that's how it should be. We're putting power back in their hands, and people need to justify what they believe to the people of these communities. All of the parties standing in this by-election need to set out clearly how they would change things to change life in Plattbridge, Abram, Bickershaw, Hindley, particularly those parties to my right who were all cheerleaders for the Thatcherite policies which laid us low in the first place. Will they now disown them? Apologise for them? We'll be waiting to hear. I am clear about what I am offering. If I get to stand, a vote for me will be a vote to change Labour, because Labour needs to change if we're to regain people's trust. It'll be a vote to make life more affordable again, a vote to power up places, a vote to re-industrialise. This is the choice in this by-election. Do you want Makerfield and the North to stay on the same path it's been for the last 40 years? Or do you want a new path which brings the country back together and makes it work for everyone? I know why I'm standing. I know what I'm offering. I know what my party has offered in the past has simply not been good enough. The loss of faith of voters across the North, so many of whom once saw us as their natural party, is our fault and nobody else's. I want to help fix that, and I hope people will give me the chance to make that case. Thank you very much indeed for listening, everyone.
Let's bring in our political correspondent, Rob Powell, who joins us now. Lots to chew through in that, Rob, isn't there? He set out quite a lot of policy things and also talked about Brexit that we were talking about a little earlier, saying how Brexit's been damaging. The last thing we should be doing now is arguing about that all over again.
Yeah, you said it sort of read like or sounded like a manifesto for Makerfield for his bid in Makerfield. To be honest, large swathes of it to me sounded like him laying out a manifesto to be Labour Party leader and the Prime Minister. You know, he was talking about a vote for me as a vote to change Labour, a vote to make life more affordable, a vote to reindustrialise. I mean, these ambitions and this sort of language goes beyond just I think becoming the MP for Makerfield. Yes, he did talk about local issues such as waste dumping, expanding the bee network as well. But as he did over the weekend, he sort of laced those local issues with far more broader ambitions, which I think, you know, is indicative of what the kind of truth that does speak its name is about this by-election, that it is essentially Andy Burnham setting his sights on number 10 and plotting his ambitions towards that. He set out what he thought the problem was, 40 years of the country being on the wrong path. I guess the first thing that I thought when I heard him say that was, I wonder if Andy Burnham knows of anyone that might have been in office during that 40 years who he could ask or consult about how things went wrong. Because, of course, he served as a minister in Tony Blair's government. He served as a minister in Gordon Brown's government. He was an MP for quite a long time in the early noughties as well. And I think this is what, you know, critics will say, that Andy Burnham is now sort of reinventing himself as this kind of Corbyn-light politician, criticising the route that all governments have been on over the last 40 years with gradual more involvement of the private sector in everything from building to healthcare. But actually, if you wind the clock back 20 years or so, he would have been more of a proponent of this and certainly have adopted much more of a centre-right Blairite view of it. And that may well be something that he has challenged on over the course of this by-election campaign and whatever follows from it. Yes, as well, he did go out of his way to talk about Brexit. I think you read that as a direct response and reply to what Wes Streeting said on Saturday when he talked about wanting to rejoin the EU. He talked about not wanting to rerun those damaging debates, that we will get stuck in a rut if we reopen those arguments as well, that he wants to bring people back together. So very much distancing himself from what his position was on paper before today anyway, that he does want to rejoin. 7 months ago at Labour conference, where you'll remember he was criticised, I think, along that Labour conference for giving some interviews before where he started talking about his national ambitions for the country, very much read as a leadership pitch back then. Didn't go down well with Labour members 7 months ago. He was also in a Fringe event 7 months ago when he was asked about this and basically said, look, I'm going to say it out loud. I want to see the UK rejoin the EU. I would want to see the UK back within the EU in my lifetime, is what he said on camera. So he seems to have changed his tune on that as well. Look, this was clearly a pitch, a by-election pitch, a pitch for the candidacy of Makerfield and a pitch to being made the MP of Makerfield, but clearly it goes broader than that as well. And I don't think you can listen to Andy Burnham talking about these sort of quite broad ambitions that he has without concluding that his overall political aim goes a little bit further up than just Makerfield.